Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast. For some reason, we're a Doctor Who podcast. I don't know. I don't think I actually like this show.
I've always said 70% of this show is absolute shite.
It's so much of my life I have spent consuming content from this show and talking about stuff from this show, and all it does is cause me pain and anger and frustration over and over and over again, and yet I keep coming back. I keep being like, maybe it'll be good this time. I get tricked by the odd good episode. There's an episode where I'm like, oh, that wasn't bad. Oh, hang on a second. Oh, maybe this is the upswing. Yay. No, it's not. It's a lie. Garbage. Bad show.
I don't follow sports, but this is what I imagine it's like, you know. Most of the time your team is doing absolute shite.
Yeah, so the Empire of Death came out last week, and god damn, it sucked. I don't know. I haven't really seen any positive reactions from the Empire of Death other than people being like, I don't get why people are so critical about the story. I like it. Which, if that's your opinion, fair. I don't really give a shit. I gave you a silly voice to make you feel bad. But
yeah, if you like this episode, fair enough. The only positive reactions I've seen from it is this one account on Twitter is like, I cried during this scene. And then 2 days later, they watch the scene again and they're like, I still cry watching this scene. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I don't get it. So I don't even know how much we want to break down scene by scene.
I'm Scott, by the way.
Oh yeah, sorry. Hello, I'm Matthew. There's just like a bleh. There's like bleh in this episode where they just I was about to say Chibnall. Oh my god. my brain auto-corrected to complaining about Doctor Who. We must be back in time. No, this is Russell T Davies fucking up his entire story. I don't understand what the point of this final was, because nothing got answered, and the answers we did get didn't make sense with anything else in the rest of the season. And so you just get this fucking confusing mess, this absolute mess of an episode.
I'll just say it. Do we give a shit about these gods? Because the Doctor's defeated 3 of them so far, and it's been easy peasy. Well, he plays catch with Neil Patrick Harris. He plays like a ball game with Neil Patrick Harris. He plays a musical note with Maestro. Yeah. And he takes bloody Sutek for a walk. That's it. It's easy. Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's... I don't know. I think Maestro and the Toymaker probably were the most interesting out of these god villains, because they actually like warped reality a little bit and gave us some fun set pieces and some fun like battle of wits, I guess. Sutek does fucking nothing.
Yeah,
Sutek does absolutely nothing. And, you know, he kills the entire universe at the start of the episode. So at the very beginning of the episode, there's no stakes. All the stakes are gone because the bad guy has won. Awesome. I know the good guy's gonna win at the end of the day, so what do I care at the start of the episode if everybody loses at the start? You make them lose at the end. You lose at the end of the last episode, so I have a whole week of going, oh my god, how are they gonna get out of this one? Instead, I'm like, oh, they're gonna get out of this one. That's okay.
Yeah, with an easy comparison is Avengers, because it's basically the same thing, you know.
It's same death and everything.
And at the end of Infinity War, we presume everyone's gonna come back alive, but we don't know how. And also, the end of Infinity War is fucking emotional. The scene where Spider-Man is dying on the floor, that's emotional shit. There is no fucking emotion in watching the unit team evaporate into nothing, Like, Kate Stewart does a little poetry session about birds for some reason.
I loved watching Rose in this episode because if you just watch her in the background, she's doing nothing. She's just there like fucking. I don't want to be here. She's given no direction to do anything, so her performance is so stilted and weird. And but she dies right at the start of the episode. It's like, all right, okay, so we're just gonna kill off Rose and everything. All right, got you. I believe you.
She has no lines throughout the episode, and that's kind of weird.
She has one. She has
Okay.
one. She has a couple lines, but one of her lines, she's like, "Oh, I'll come with you, Ruby, because they just made me investigate a shoplift or something."
Week.
That's episode. Oh yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, no. Yeah, no, she does nothing in this episode. Glorified extra. Why is she there?
Why was she there last week? She does nothing either. She has like 2-3 lines. She hugs the doctor, and then she goes off with Ruby, and then she gets called beautiful by Mrs. Flood, and then she's back at unit, and she plays Fortnite in the background. That's all she does.
Oh my god. Yeah, it was terrible. But yeah, Sutek, I didn't believe as a big bad villain guy. I didn't believe the stakes of the episode when the universe got destroyed. This is the second final in a row where the universe has been destroyed, because this is also basically Flux again, where we've got a big bad unknown thing destroying the entire universe, and the Doctor is very sad in the TARDIS looking out into the destroyed space going, "No, how could you destroy the space? I needed space." But I guess at the end of this episode, the events of Flux are undone. So maybe that's why Russell T. Davis was like, "Oh no, Flux is canon. Flux is definitely canon. I'm going to write a whole season to undo that." Because when he brings everybody back to life, presumably he also brings back the rest of the universe that got destroyed in Flux. Because
presumably,
why wouldn't you?
But it's never going to be addressed.
No, they're never going to talk about Flux again. They mentioned it once in the 60th anniversary, and that's it. That's all you're getting. The Doctor doesn't even make reference to the fact that Sutek's job's half done for him by the time he starts. The
whole story twist of, Sutek was here for the last 500 episodes, just clinging on the top of the TARDIS, is kind of bullshit.
It's dumb. It's really dumb. I don't like it. I liked the effects mostly. I guess.
Yeah.
The effects were the performances from everybody. I liked. Again, is one of the best acted, worst written shows I've ever seen. Everybody's doing a lot with nothing.
It looks beautiful, this episode, but also this whole episode kind of feels like it was shot under COVID restrictions because there's only like 4 actors the entire episode. It's very bizarre. Again, it goes back to the feeling there's no stakes. There's no stakes because you know it's going to be undone by the end of the episode. There's no emotions involved. I didn't even feel emotions when Ruby reunited with her mom. I'm sorry, I just felt nothing.
I actively felt angry when Ruby reunited with her mom. I felt absolutely nothing when the Doctor is screaming into space and it's supposed to be this big dramatic moment. I was like, this is not this doesn't work. This isn't landing. I don't believe for a fucking second that the Doctor thinks that there's no way out of this. You know, if you can't hook me into the setup of the story, I'm just not going to be there for the rest of it. And talking about the Ruby stuff, holy fucking shit. Holy fucking... I don't think I could have predicted how terrible that was. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough right now. Absolutely atrocious. It was... So we've had... Something that's been stuck in my mind is we have had 2 adoption storylines now, back to back in Doctor Who. One of them, written by Chris Chibnall, with the Doctor and the Doctor being, adopted by the Time Lords and things like that, with Tek Te-Hun or whatever. It's very convoluted and written very weirdly, but has a really interesting and nuanced payoff at the end when the Doctor decides that they don't want to actually find out their history. And this was written from the perspective of Chris Chibnall, who was adopted as a child and was able to layer this adoption storyline with a level of real life nuance and thought that makes it a more deep moment where you're like, oh shit, okay, hang on, I didn't consider the possibility of not wanting to find out your adopted parents because you're happy with the life that you've already got and you're happy with the love that you've got around you. And then Russell T Davies comes in and is like, let's write the most generic, boring adoption storyline possible, where the goal is find your parents and you love them more than your adopted parents. This is your real mum, not the lady that's been raising you for the past fucking 18, 20 years of your life. No, this lady that is of the world's best fucking sneaky person. I don't know. That was the word I was looking for there. She's like a ninja, you know, like she just avoided surveillance for her entire life. She's never given blood. She's never been sick. She's never registered to vote. She's never been to the doctor, you know. I presume Ruby must have been a home birth because there's no hospital records of her visiting.
Yeah, the line is implied. There's a point where Kate Stewart is like, hey, her stepfather was abusive and she must have hidden the pregnancy, which I do like that reveal being, oh, it's so ordinary, but at the same time, you've added a million supernatural twists to this story. From, oh, somehow the memory has changed. Suddenly she's pointing at me, the doctor. That makes no fucking sense. Why?
Yeah, the snow. Why is it snowing? Why can Ruby summon snow everywhere? Just because she feels like it, I guess. What is Meister talking about when there's like a hidden song in her heart or something? When they tie them up and she's like, oh my god, dude, there's something special about you, Ruby. What's this weird thing going on? Turns out there's not anything special about Ruby. And there was, obviously, Russell T Davies talked about how he was inspired by The Last Jedi in terms of the reveal. With The Last Jedi, specifically the big twist in Rey being like, oh, you're nobody, Rey. You're not a Skywalker. You're not a Palpatine. You're not from the big families. You're just a random fucking person. Which I think really works in Last Jedi and doesn't really work in Doctor Who. And I think it's mostly just the way that Russell T Davies has written it, because the way that it's presented in Last Jedi, and even in the Star Wars universe as a whole, the way that the Force is explained, you know, it's just midichlorians, whatever the fuck. So there is this inherent randomness to the universe of anybody can be a Force wielder, anybody can do whatever, and the fact that Rey, you know, she's projecting this idea that, oh, maybe I could be somebody important because I didn't know who my parents were, but it's like, no, it's just the chaos of the universe. You were thrown into a random desert, and you happen to be good at the Force. There's no overarching fucking giant pulling the strings above, until of course you get to the next movie, and there was the whole time. But just isolating that in Last Jedi, I think it works much better in the universe, especially because there's no unexplainable mystical things, because everybody has mystical powers, so it's not a weird thing that Rey has mystical powers, you know, whereas in Doctor Who it's Earth. Most people can't make it snow when they feel like it or when they're about to die, you know. And so when you get somebody that does that, you're like, wow, there's something strange about you. Nah, it's just a thing. It just happens. You know, it doesn't work as well because there's no internal logic driving the twist. It's just a twist because halfway through writing the scripts, Russell T Davies caught Last Jedi on BBC Two and went, oh, wow, that was a pretty good movie. Like,
the thing is, I don't even know how to wrap my head around what we just witnessed with this final.
There's so much shit in this episode. There's so much. The fucking Susan stuff, where they're constantly, you know, the last episode, mostly compared to this one, but still, you know, where it's like, oh, Susan, no Susan, ha ha ha, villain the whole time. And then by the end of the episode, the doctor's like, I did abandon Susan, and I'm still not going to go get her. I'm still not going to visit her, but maybe I should at some point. I'm not going to do it now, but maybe I should.
Yeah, what really bothers me about this episode is it's like the Doctor completely forgets about all the supernatural stuff surrounding Ruby, like the snow or the memories changing. There's no explanation as to why they've been dropped. There's no, like, there needs to be a line from the Doctor being like, okay, your mum is completely human, you're somehow completely human, but you still make it snow and stuff like that. And
I guess it's just magic. It's the magic power of love. That's what it was.
And what I want the Doctor to say is basically, we're going to pause you here. You know, you need to spend time with your mum, and I'll come back and figure out this mystery. There's no allusion to the fact the Doctor is still wanting to find out the mystery.
You could do some timey-wimey nonsense where you're like, because the TARDIS arrived and the goblins, when I absolutely murdered them on top of that church spire, that caused a rupture because they came from a different universe or whatever, like that caused a rupture through time, slip space or something, and left a connection with you and your mother. And so when you're like about to die or you're missing her very much, that bond forms and you almost like travel back through to then, and that's where that snow's coming from. Like, you can explain it away with bullshit easily, but they're just like, if we don't talk about it, people won't remember that.
But, you know, Sutek has been clinging on to the top of the TARDIS for 500 episodes, and he only became visible because he saw a 15-year-old girl abandon her child at a church, and he's like, oh my god, what the fuck is this? That's the only reason why he's revealed himself. There's no other reason, like... Maybe Flux, he could have revealed himself because he's like, holy shit, they're doing what I want to do. I'll join them, you know?
Yeah.
It makes no fucking sense.
Why did Ruby's... I guess Ruby's mum wore the cloak because she didn't want anyone to notice her at the middle of the night on Christmas Day when nobody's outside and it's snowing very heavily.
Yeah.
But I guess she knew there would be security cameras around. Where did she get a cloak like that? And why did she already own one?
But also somehow magically she's like, yeah, I'm going to point to this sign.
Yeah,
and I guess the people watching the CCTV footage later on will realize I'm pointing to this sign. And that's... and they'll realize, oh, she's naming her child. Makes no fucking sense.
The whole pointing thing...
Yeah.
Straight up doesn't make any sense at all. Not only from like how would anybody even see her pointing at the sign, from a basic how humans act and behave sort of perspective, nobody ever has done that to name their child. Nobody has ever gone, sign, that's the one, that's their name right there, I'm calling them that. And it also, I don't understand the emotional impact that it's trying to achieve either. Like that, I guess your mum always wanted you to be called Ruby. It wasn't just what the priests called you because you were named, because they were found on the road. Actually, your mum wanted to call you that because she left you on that road. Is that a massive emotional difference? Is that supposed to make me care more? I care less now.
Like maybe she could have been called Ruby because there's a little note left with the baby. Yeah. If you want to convey the idea of she really cares about her baby enough to give her a name.
Yeah.
And just leave a note, just leave a note. Pointing to a sign does not make any fucking sense. And also the idea of going back to the church on Ruby Road, she doesn't fucking point to that sign. There's no sign on.
No, there's not.
There's no sign at all in the
episode. She doesn't point at all. In the church on Ruby Road, it is not a plot point that she points. She puts the baby down, she fucks right off. She just goes away. And it's not until
Space
Devil's
Babies,
Core?
I think it was.
Space Babies. Space Babies straight away. Yeah, so it's not until Space Babies that the Doctor sees into the past again and the memory changes somehow. Again, doesn't make any sense how that's happening. And it doesn't make sense that the memory changes either. So Ruby's mum is supernatural, I guess, or when we saw it on the church on Ruby Road, it's unreliable narrator sort of thing, and we're seeing it from the Doctor's perspective where he didn't remember what happened. Yeah,
the Doctor definitely makes a point of pausing and being like, somehow the memory has changed. And there's been no explanation, there's no... I don't think they've mentioned the memory thing. Well, I guess the whole memory TARDIS and Ruby solidifying the memory TARDIS is part of the memory system, but she has the power of memories.
I guess it really feels like, to me, the Church on Ruby Road was written before Russell T Davies figured out the story he wanted to tell with Ruby. And so when Space Baby starts, he's like, oh, I need to add in a bit that I wanted to add in the Church on Ruby Road so I can get this twist at the end. So I'm just gonna and
no
you know.
it's he could have just added it into the Church on Ruby Road, you know.
He could have just not done it. He could have just not done it. He could just not do it, you know. The Ruby stuff, it's really bad. First of all, it's terrible, awful, terrible. But I also don't give a shit about Ruby as a companion. She's Millie Gibson's fantastic.
Yes.
Incredible performance, instantly likable, charismatic, charming, fun to watch on TV. Everything you want from a lead character. No depth. Absolutely nothing going on behind the surface of that character at all. I'm Ruby. I don't know who my mum is. Oh, now I do. Bye. Why do I care? Why do I care about her?
There needed to be some sort of evolution for sure. There needs to be some sort of conflict within her character arc, or you know, her
even
character
with her
relationship.
And the Doctor. Conflict with her and
exactly
anybody.
What I'm gonna say.
There's no conflict. Yeah.
She goes through every episode with the same sort of emotions, same sort of reactions to things. There is no changing. You know, if you go back to series 1 with Rose Tyler, like, there's so many episodes where she's at odds with the Doctor, whether it's Dalek, where she's trying to convince the Doctor not to shoot the Dalek. Like, that's her disagreeing with the Doctor. It's a major moment in both of her arcs. Father's Day is also a major moment in both of her arcs. Like, you know, like even in the final, where the Doctor,
even in episode 2 of series 1, at the end of the world, or whatever it is, Rose has a whole argument with the Doctor because she's like, "Who are you actually? Like, tell me about yourself. What the fuck? Like, hang on, this is wild. I was kind of impulsive there." And the Doctor was like, "Nah, fuck off. I'm not telling you nothing." And there's conflict. There's tension between them because there's this mystery of Rose doesn't know who the Doctor is. And they both have their own goals, and they're both using each other for their own things. The Doctor's trying to move past and deal with the events of the Time War and things like that, and Rose is trying to deal with the loss of her father and, go on an adventure with the hot guy that's now her surrogate sex dad. But there's just nothing. There's just no depth. And it's been a problem we've been saying throughout this season.
Yeah.
Is that the plot is a lot of fun, the acting is really good, the production value is great. There's nothing going on in the script.
Yeah, even in Ruby's solo episode, which on the surface you would think, oh, this is giving her enough room for a character arc, it's then mostly forgotten about until basically this episode where Roger Ap Gwilym comes back, and suddenly we find out that he actually also wanted to do compulsory DNA tests, and so they go to 2046 to get the DNA of Ruby's so they can find the mother, which does this
also so what in 73 yards.
Yes.
Ruby stops Roger Ap Gwilym from becoming prime minister because he resigns immediately. Like within the first day or something of him becoming prime minister, he resigns because Ruby stops him by making the lady talk to him. Now we cut back to the actual timeline where that didn't happen. So Roger Ap Gwilym becomes prime minister anyway and is able to use his DNA to, he's in office long enough to enact policies that have legitimate effects on the world because everyone's got their DNA registered. So what the fuck was the point in 73 yards? It's an episode that does nothing.
Oh yeah, I love the idea of the big politician who commits several war crimes, I guess. Yeah. Stopping him doesn't really matter in the end. He still goes on to commit those war crimes.
Yeah. It doesn't. You only stop them in the fake universe that we're not living in anymore. So,
And also, like, the whole tie back doesn't need to happen. Why doesn't Unit has alien technology, presumably. They have alien technology. Unit does. Why can't Unit find the mother? It makes no sense to me.
They also have. There's a lot of
links.
stuff going on. There's a lot of things going on with Unit that are really weird. They're like, just the mentioning of Unit just flashed that end scene in my eyes.
Oh my god!
Or where everybody's firing guns, and you've got literally the 13-year-old kid firing guns out of his Segway.
Yeah. A sonic screwdriver can't look like a screwdriver because it looks like a gun, but a 13-year-old can use his Segway to fucking...
It's just this. I think it's this continual thing with Russell T Davies where he's kind of said it himself, where he's doing things to get online engagement. I don't believe for a minute that he redesigned the sonic screwdriver because he thought it looked like a gun. I think he said that because he knew people would talk about it. I think every single bit of weird gaps in logic that we found with Russell T Davies, making fucking taking Davros out of his wheelchair and making him into like a younger version of Davros because there's too many villains in wheelchairs, and then going on to have Jinx Monsoon and things like that as villains. These are what's the word I'm looking for, like minorities. Like, these are not people that have got great representation on camera, and yet you're showing them off as villains, but you actively said you didn't want to showcase that because it's like a trope and whatnot, blah 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 blah. Again, I think he does this just to spur conversation. I think that he just wants people talking about Doctor Who. So if he does something that he knows is going to rile up the fan base and light a fire under them, then that in his eyes is a good thing. Whether or not it is, I guess you can make your own mind up with. It's something to talk about.
Yeah, and I think this is for sure why we have these kind of inconsistencies with the plot. Why Ruby suddenly can make it snow. Why she can suddenly change memories. Because he wants to have this running thing in each episode that kind of opens up the mystery a little bit more. We've been talking about why has Ruby changed memories, why has she made it snow several times in every episode, and I guess he just needs to figure out. I don't know what I think.
Do you think Russell T Davies is friends with J.J. Abrams? Because like he has taken his storytelling methods and just like the mystery box shit, where it's like, let's set up a mystery right at the start that we're never gonna answer. We're never going to give an answer to it. We're just going to use it to drive the plot forward. And then when you get to the end of it and I have to give you an answer, it's just going to be some bullshit that doesn't make sense.
If next season we find out that Ruby is the granddaughter of Davros, yes, I would definitely say yes. Which I wouldn't put it past him at this stage.
Yeah. It's such a weird season of Doctor Who, because on its surface it's really good. On its absolute surface, this is a really good season of Doctor Who, and the second you're like, is it what made it good? The acting, the effects. The story was a bit shit though, wasn't it? Oh, the story's shit in all of this. Hang on.
Every episode I think we've had issues with, even the ones we really like. Boom is probably the example of like a almost perfect script, where but even then, I have negative opinions on Boom. I really love the episode. I have some negative opinions, but that's just me nitpicking, really, honestly.
The issues I've got with Boom really come down to just the weird character logic, where it's like, the little girl doesn't understand why her dad is suddenly blue now, and is like, oh my god, my dad is here.
All this guy is gonna fucking explode the entire planet if he steps off the mine. Oh, look at these pictures of me and my dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff in Boom for sure, but it is my favorite episode out of I think this entire run. And there's some weird bits in it though. Looking at like the Doctor in Boom, he feels almost like a different version of Shooty's Doctor than we get in every other episode. He's way more snarky. He's way more sarcastic. He's way more bitter. You know,
he's under extreme pressure.
I really like that, but
he's under extreme pressure, so I think it makes sense for him to change.
The last episode, he fought a god. The last episode, he fought a literal god. You know,
he's under extreme pressure where he can't change his emotions too much. So
yeah. Yeah, he has to kind of maintain a stoic sort of, you know, he can't move too much. But I think it's the episode where Shooty became the Doctor for me. I think it's his best performance out of all the episodes. I think he's absolutely amazing in it. But this isn't really about Boom. This is about the Empire of Death, more like the Empire of the Death of Doctor Who got him.
You know this is Doctor Who because we hate the series final. I think I've hated most series finals at this point.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I think I've been truly happy with Doctor Who, which I think is the natural state for anybody that watches Doctor Who. I think if you're a fan of Doctor Who, you actively dislike it most of the time, and obviously as Russell is now the showrunner, it is tradition that we hate him and everything that he makes.
Honestly, I think my dislike of the show happened in 2013, 11 years ago, with Series 7B. And, you know, Series 8 happened. I wasn't happy about that. Series 9 happened. I hated Series 9 at the time. And when Series 10 happened, back on board, baby. And when Series 11 happened, it's okay. Series 12 happened. Series 13 happened.
Yeah.
Series 14 happened.
Yeah.
For
me, I liked...
Yeah.
I liked the end of Matt Smith's run. I didn't like Capaldi's first season at all. I thought it was absolutely atrocious. I loved his second season. I adored his third season. I liked Jodie's first season. I then really disliked the second season, and Flux broke me as a person. And now we've come back all the way around again to season 1, and I dislike that as well. In the build-up to this episode, the reason why we're actually late talking about the Empire of Death is because you and I have gone back and watched all of this new era of Russell T Davis's things. So we've rewatched the 60th anniversary, and we rewatched all of season 1. I don't like the 60th anniversary. I think it is pretty bad, especially as a celebration of Doctor Who. I think it's pretty bad as an anniversary special. But I just think overall it's kind of impossible to get into if you weren't already a fan of Doctor Who. I think there's some weird things. I think there's some really weird things in scripting and plot that become bigger issues when season 1 starts. They're like little nuggets where you're like, oh, that's a bit weird. Why are you doing that, Russell? And then then he continues that problem as it goes on. I do think they kind of get better with each one, but they all suffer massively from pacing issues. Like Wild Blue Yonder, I really, really like the second half of that episode. The first half of that episode is unbelievably slow. Absolutely fucking nothing happening in that episode until then it's like, oh, actually it's about big goofy monsters. And I like the big goofy monsters. That episode takes a real long time to get going for me. It's one of the reasons why I like the giggle so much, because right at the start, it's like, go. You know, we're here. Here's the big bad guy, and it's wacky and crazy and wild. Dislike by generation as time goes on. I don't see the reason why it happened.
Yeah, there's absolutely no narrative purpose to it anymore. You know, when we first watched it initially, it's like, okay, you know, it's to allow time for a soft reboot to happen. You know, he's going to overcome his trauma of the Time War, of Flux, of everything that's happened over these last 13 seasons. I mean, none of it matters, because immediately Shurigawa is crying in every episode about either his past or, you know, it's...
Which to be fair, Russell did say that is what's going to happen. He did say that Shurigawa is sorted out for about 5 minutes, but it does make like, what the fuck is the point of this? Other than to make headlines and get people to talk about Doctor Who.
When Shurigawa comes out of David Tennant's belly button, immediately he's like, oh, we're doing therapy out of order, you know, this is me, I'm better now because I underwent therapy. I mean, turns out he didn't go through therapy.
Forgot it. Yeah, he just forgot.
He went to one session.
If you watch Shurigawa again in the 60th anniversary compared to season 1, it feels like a different Doctor. Yes, it doesn't feel like Shooty's Doctor in the 60th anniversary, which could just be because they hadn't figured out the scripts yet. They didn't know what they were doing with the character. They just knew what they kind of wanted his vibe to be, because the vibe is there. He's sassy and, you know, confident and whatever, but he doesn't feel like how he acts in season 1 in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, it was Shurigawa's first day on the job. He's acting alongside the legend David Tennant, the biggest actor,
and he's in his
to play
pants.
This role. Yeah, so there's a lot of difficulty on your first day having to act alongside the biggest person in the role. But in The Giggle, he's definitely more mature, I would say. Whereas more mature, maybe less camp. Is what I would say is like in The Giggle, whereas in The Church on the Ruby Road, I think he found himself and he's immediately more camp, not in a bad way, of course, but you know he's more himself in the Church on the Ruby Road, which I really like this Doctor, but I want more of a arc to him. Please. It's
honestly one of the things that that it was lacking in Jodie's era as well. Yeah. Like if you go to let's go all the way back, season 1, 2005, Christopher Eccleston. He has an amazing arc of dealing with the trauma of the war, of, you know, learning to open up, learning to love again, etc., etc. David Tennant's arc, where he becomes the fucking ultra time travel god. I can do what I want sort of guy. I forget what it was called. Time Lord Victorious. Yes. You know, where it's, you know, he loses so much and becomes so egotistical in himself that it's not until he has to actually sacrifice himself that it's like, oh my god, you know, I realize now why I was doing this, and I realize where I went wrong and things like that. And you get Matt Smith's run where he goes from childlike sort of goofy guy into the darker stuff and into his own lore and things like that, until eventually he literally just dies of old age because he's like, I'm gonna protect this town forever, you know, I'm the guardian of this place, you know. And then Capaldi's arc, probably the best one out of all of them, where, you know, he's learning to be a good man again, even though, I mean, Matt Smith did just literally spend his entire life saving a town, but I guess, who knows if you're a good guy, Doctor, I don't know. But the arc that Capaldi goes on is fantastic. Jodie was certainly there. I don't know, because her story is not about her, which is really weird, because it's all about her, because it's about the Doctor's past. You know, but it's not about what her Doctor's going through. It's what her Doctor's already gone through.
Even in the big reveal about the timeless child, we find out through a PowerPoint presentation from the Master where Jodie's just standing there with her mouth open, basically.
Like Joe Biden.
Like she says, like she asks like maybe 10 questions throughout the whole presentation. There's not really any emotion going on, which isn't Jodie's fault, by the way. I'm not saying it's Jodie's fault at all. She was amazing in the role.
When she's given the opportunity, she's very good. She's just not often given the opportunity to do anything. But even then, the Centenary special I thought was a really good send off for Jodie, and I thought did a lot for her. Both at the role and even for Sacha Dhawan as the Master. I think it's probably the best he's ever been as the Master, because he's not just monologuing all the time, even though he was for a large part of it. And what's the arc of Ncuti's Doctor in this series? In season 1, what has from episode 1, from Church on Ruby Road to this final, what has Ncuti's Doctor? What's changed about his Doctor? Nothing.
Yeah,
I can't think of a single thing that's actually changed about him. And it's what we were saying before when the first few episodes came out, is you could mix and match these episodes and it wouldn't feel wrong because the characters haven't changed. They're completely the same by the start and by the end. There's no growth, there is no depth, there is nothing to take away from it. It's fun, it's entertaining, I guess. But Doctor Who's always been a little bit more. There's always been something to chew on. And it's the benefit of science fiction is it tends to be a more complex thing to digest. There tends to be bigger, grander ideas in scope that have got complex internal mechanisms and complex personalities to them that make it fun to digest. And even if you're leaning more into the fantasy magic element of it, fucking read a fantasy book. They're so complicated. Yeah, like, there's so much things going on in it. There's just, I don't know. I don't know. There's so much shit. It's just, I want more. I just want more.
Yeah, I think when Russell was initially announced, we were both expecting the Russell from 2005 to come back, where he writes.
I think everybody was, honestly.
Because, compare Classic Who to the very first series of Russell's run. Night and day difference in terms of characterization, and that's why I appealed. That's why I was appealed to the show. That's why you were probably appealed to the show, because Rose Tyler felt real, and everything she goes through, every reaction to the alien planets, to time travel itself, felt authentic and real. Her relationship with her mom and her boyfriend felt real.
Absolutely insane. Is I was watching the first 2 episodes of season 1 of Eccleston's run the other day with a friend who's never seen Doctor Who before, right? She cried at the end of episode 2 when when Rose is like, when she sees the end of the world and then they travel back to Earth and the Doctor's like, see, you think it's gonna last forever, but it's not gonna last forever, and you thought that was an incredible ending. I'm like, this is only episode 2. This season's gonna ruin you. Like, but there's a realness to it. There's a groundedness to the insanity going around, and it feels like there's consequence to it. You think back to the Devil's Cord in this episode, or in this season, sorry, when Ruby does the thing that's from the last Sutek episode that was just a subtle bit of foreshadowing that I genuinely think is quite clever, when Ruby's like, oh, but why don't you take us to the future? So because I'm from the future, and that means that this thing can't happen. And the Doctor takes her to the future, and we see the whole world is destroyed. You don't feel anything. It doesn't feel like Ruby really feels anything. And I don't know. I don't know, because on one hand, you've already done it, and am I just wanting you to do the thing that you've already done again? And on the other hand, the thing that you've done instead is bad, though. So maybe we just need new writers on the show that can present new ideas and new perspectives that we've not seen before. So we don't just have a mirror effect of Rose and the Doctor again, because that's all that Ruby is. It's just Rose that we've got at home, and still.
And in series 1 as well, in the 3rd episode, The Unquiet Dead, the same thing was going to happen again, where Rose is like, hang on, I'm from 2005. Things don't go badly wrong here. And the Doctor would take Rose into the TARDIS and show her an alternative 2005. I wasn't done in the episode because of budget, but also it felt right for it not to be in the episode, because it then takes away from what the episode is about. When it happens in the Devil's Cord, it's just a 2-minute distraction, and it feels out of place. removes the tension of the scene beforehand where everything is silent and Jinx Monsoon uses
I
the
love
tuning
that scene.
fork.
That scene,
that's incredible.
That scene's so fucking cool. Yeah, that scene is so goddamn cool. Where the Doctor is just muting the world, and it's pure visual storytelling.
Yes,
Absolutely incredible, awesome shit. And I love the set design and everything in the Devil's Court, because even when you travel into the future, and then Jinx Monsoon's like, actually, we're in a studio. Wait, like that stuff's all really cool. But yeah, there's just little weird nuggets that don't quite fit into where you want them to fit, you know. I don't know. I just want a new writer. I just want a new fucking writer. I don't know. I like Russell T Davies. I like his Doctor Who for the most part. I will watch. Obviously, I will watch season 2 when it comes out, because I am obligated to, because of the podcast. But even if I didn't have the podcast, I would probably watch season 2 out of sheer curiosity. Yeah. But I don't think I would be mega excited to watch it. You know, I think it'd be cautiously like, okay, my expectations have been tempered massively.
Yeah, because throughout my entire life, I've watched Doctor Who on the day it airs. Like the minute I have the opportunity to watch Doctor Who, I watch it. You know, I've never gone, but you know, after series 9, I felt so deflated with Hellbent, and I hated Hellbent to the point when series 10 started. I didn't watch the show until like 3 weeks after it had aired, because I'm like, I can't be arsed with this show. I'm done. And then suddenly Twitter was like, yeah, it's actually good again. This episode was great. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll watch. And I feel like I would have the same thing with series 2, where I enjoyed this series, but I wouldn't be in a rush to watch the next episode as it airs. But I have to, I guess. I'm exhausted of this show, honestly, but it is what it is. I guess.
I'm really nervous for season 2, simply because it's already written. Because it's already written, it's already in production. You know, it's deep in production. They've been filming it for a while.
Oh, they finished filming it last month. May 25th, they finished. You know? So
yeah, it is. You know, it's you talked about it before season 1 even came out. Of what if it's bad and he can't course correct, because he's so committed to this is what Doctor Who is now. If it doesn't connect with the fans and the people that want to watch the show, you're fucked by the time season 2 comes around, because if you've lost them, you know. Which I'm going to be super curious to see the season 2 ratings, because season 1 ratings, as much as I don't like talking about ratings because they don't actually matter, they were fine. They were the continuation of what we've seen throughout all of Doctor Who since Capaldi's era, which is roughly between 3 to 4 million people, you know.
And the most important thing, the most important thing about this season is it's the #1 BBC show for under 35s, which is what the BBC want. You know, the BBC want those under 35s, because that's the core audience, you know, and that's good. You know,
it is good, but if you read the reactions to any Doctor Who post made on social media now, all the comments are, that final was shit. Way to, you know, duck out of it. Way to not answer any questions. Don't think I'll be watching season 2, etc., etc., etc. I don't know if season 2 is going to be as popular as season 1, just because fans are pissed. Or maybe, you know, maybe it will be that word of mouth thing where it's a slow start and then it will build up. But do you believe that final is going to give you answers that you want? Do you think Mrs. Flood is going to be a rewarding villain after 2 seasons of hype?
Can we talk about Mrs.
No
Flood?
faith. I have no faith. I have no faith that that's going to have a good payoff.
I was kind of on board with Mrs. Flood when she initially appeared, because it was exciting, the idea of, oh, she's breaking the fourth wall. And then suddenly I'm like, but wait, why? The mystery needs to feel organic to what's going on in the show. It can't just be
the end of
a character
episode.
turning to the character saying, "Oh, look at me, I'm a mysterious character. Aren't you
evil.
intrigued?
Whoa.
Look at me." I have absolutely no... I don't feel anything towards Mrs. Flood at the moment because it's too obvious, and I just came off of a series where another long mystery has just been unsatisfying. So I can't pay attention to Mrs. Flood. It's bullshit, honestly. I don't feel anything.
Yeah, I think that's the hard bit for it, and it's honestly the worst reaction you can get is apathy, because at the end of Empire of Death, you know, I didn't really I watched it live at midnight. And it was such a weird experience for me because I got to the end of the episode. It's like 1 a.m. or something. I'm dead tired because I'm like 65 years old, trapped in a 24-year-old's body. So like past 11 o'clock, I'm usually pretty useless. So I was like, okay. I finished the episode. And I was like, that was, all right. I went to bed and I didn't know how to feel about what I just watched. And then as each day passed and I thought about everything that I had seen, I was like, that was so bad. That was like every little plot point that I could think of had a fucking abysmal explanation to it. And it just left me feeling deflated. I wasn't yelling at the TV. I wasn't going, "Oh, fuck you, Russell T. Davies, blah, blah, blah." I was just like, you know?
Yeah, I watched it the next... Yeah, I watched it the next day at like 3:30 in the afternoon. I was kind of sleep deprived because I didn't sleep much the night before and I had to wake up early for work, and I also had an 8-hour shift. So I was kind of dozing on and off throughout the episode, to be honest. But I didn't miss anything, so not a big deal. And at the end of it, I'm like, I texted you throughout the entire thing. I was not happy from the outset. I was like, this is bullshit. She's pointing to a sign. That's bullshit. I was angry at the episode. And then after I watched it, I'm like, maybe I will enjoy it when I'm not sleep deprived. And I watched it this morning, and I felt the exact same thing, except more angry because I had more energy. But yeah, Mrs. Flood, the whole, when she's with Cherry Sunday and she's like, "Do you believe in the power of prayer? Then tell your maker I will come to storm down his gates of gold to seize his kingdom in my true name." And I'm like, why are you having this scene with Cherry Sunday? What the fuck is going on? And then Cherry Sunday at the end of the episode isn't like, "Hey, that next door neighbor acted really strange towards me earlier."
Absolute freak. Yeah.
And also, in terms of like where the world stands at the end of the episode, I don't believe they won't think about the fact they all got exterminated. Essentially, they all died for a minute.
This isn't the first time.
I don't understand.
This isn't the first time everyone on Earth has died at once. Okay, this happens almost annually in Doctor Who. You know,
it's at the point where it just does not make sense. Because if we died during this podcast and then we came back, you would review the footage and be like, "Hey, why did this recording take 25 hours?
Hold up.
Oh, shit, we died.
I died? What the fuck?"
like there's physical evidence of you actually dying, you know?
Yeah.
And
but maybe I was just a lamppost the entire time or something. You know, maybe that's... I just hate.
And at the end of the episode... The end of the episode where Mrs. Flood is standing on the fucking roof and she's like, "Oh, the Doctor's story will end in terror," which I don't fucking believe because the show has to go on for an infinite amount of time. It's going to stay here for another 60 years or whatever. So I don't believe the story will end in terror. But the Doctor is going to go through something bad and then he's going to save the day like he does all the fucking time. He has to return to the status quo. Like, he can't.
The most cynical take I've ever seen. Of course the Doctor's gonna. The show's called Doctor Who. You ever think he's ever gonna fucking die? You're like,
but don't fucking turn to the camera and be like, "Oh, the Doctor's story will end in terror." That's fucking every end of everybody's story.
It's for
we're both gonna die in fucking terror.
It is. I think my issue isn't with the false setup of do I believe in the stakes that are being built with this villain. I think it's more just the incredible laziness of having the villain be like, I'm bad and you should be scared. I think that's the bit that rubs me the wrong way more than the setup for whoever Mrs. Flood is, whether or not she's Susan, whether or not she's somebody else. I don't believe she's Susan. I honestly will be amazed if we ever fucking mention Susan again come season 2. It feels like stuff, again, Russell T. Davies put in the script to get people talking about Doctor Who because you mentioned Susan. Yeah. It's going to get people online coming up with fan theories and ideas and stuff, and then at the end of it you can be like, haha, no.
If I was Russell D. Davies, I would write Mrs. Flood in a subtle way, where at the end of her first appearance, 10% of the audience are like, hey, there's something going on with her, like, there's some subtle acting where it reveals that she knows what a TARDIS is, instead of turning to the camera. Like, she smiles for a little bit when she watches the TARDIS disappear, and 10% of the audience is like, hey, she looks like she knows what a TARDIS is. What's going on? Or
you could, because it's Doctor Who, you could make it a little bit more obvious. Before she looks at the camera and she's like, everyone knows what a TARDIS is, But instead she could just be like, oh, your friend's over there in his TARDIS. Like just that one line, like she just has a line of dialogue, and Ruby's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. So he's over in that bit. Okay, cool. And then as an audience, you're like, hang on, she said the word TARDIS. Why did she? How did she know what the TARDIS was? Maybe the Doctor spoke to her before. She was chatting with the Doctor. Maybe he explained to her what it was, or maybe she knows something going on, rather than just blatantly saying it to the audience.
And that's something like 10% of the audience won't catch on their first time.
Yeah.
And then in this episode, you could have had her kind of embrace the death. She could have been just like, hey, she's smiling as she's fading away. And 30% of the audience could be like, hey, there's something going on with this character. Instead of, oh, I'm going to turn to the camera and reveal I know who Sutek is, and I'm happy that this is happening.
When she was dying and she was like, I had such plans. I was like, fuck off. Are you kidding me? This is terrible. And how am I supposed to believe her as a worse villain than Sutek when Sutek kills her immediately with no resistance? Like how is this an upgrade villain in a more dangerous villain come season 2 when your first villain is literally the god of death? How do you get scarier than that?
And how am I supposed to believe that Sutek is the greatest monster the Doctor has ever fought? When in the pyramids, in the pyramids of Mars, he just sits in a chair the entire time. In this story, he just sits on top of the TARDIS the entire time. Like, what the fuck is going on? How is this the greatest villain you've ever met? You take him for a walk in the time vortex, and that's how you defeat. But that ending as well, when he defeats him by doing the exact same fucking thing he did the last time he encountered him. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's really bad. It is really,
oh shit, bad. He escaped the time vortex. Let's take him back to the time vortex.
Let's put him back in the time vortex. That'll beat him. Oh, look, it did. Nice. Sometimes you just gotta do things twice, I guess. It is genuinely. It's an almost indefensible finale. Like, there's good bits. I don't want to come across as just negative Doctor Who fan. There's good. I liked Mel's performance. I thought.
I love her performance. Mel, Bonnie Langford is great in the role. Yes. She has shown that she can play the character in a great way when she's not written like a camp pantomime performer screaming all the time. Because she is great in this episode, but again, what did she actually do? She sits in the TARDIS. She sits in the memory TARDIS, feeling sleepy because her memories are fading. Because I guess she's the next one to die, and then she gets possessed, and then she walks away at the end of the episode.
Yeah. There was a nice little bit of subtle acting with Shooty and her when he touches her hand to notice that she's cold.
Yeah.
It's all done in the wide shot, and if you pay attention to Shooty, like as soon as their hand touches, his entire like body language changes, and he's like, "Oh,
yeah,
fuck,"
But don't worry if you catch that, because 5 minutes later we play exact same scene again, and Shooty Gat was like, "When I felt her hand, she felt cold."
The use of flashbacks in this season, is Russell not confident in his writing?
No,
is like in there. I have never seen so many flashbacks in a TV show before. It is absolutely insane. It's not only lazy in that it's just a way of delivering exposition. It's treating your audience like they're fucking idiots because they don't remember basic plot points from previous episodes, and it shows a lack of confidence in your own writing to set things up. If you're like, "Oh, remember I set this up before, by the way, okay, we'll come back to it." Okay, it's terrible. I hate flashbacks. They should be used appropriately when the time is called for them. Very rarely do you need them in a moment of tension to flash back to Ruby's mum having a conversation with you at the dinner table.
I can't quite remember. I'm quite worried, in fact, this is due to Disney Plus. And I can't quite remember the podcast I was listening to, but I believe they have like kind of close ties to the entertainment industry. And they were talking about the idea that Amazon Prime are focusing on shows that have to be written in a way where people using their phone for the entirety of the episode can understand what's going on in the episode. And I'm beginning to wonder if the notes Disney Plus are leaving are, hey, this might not be clear to an audience member who's on their phone. Can you please make it more explicitly clear what's going on?
I absolutely hate that. But at the same time, it is an actual real life problem. And both you and I are fans of an incredible TV show called Yellow Jackets. This TV show, superb, absolutely incredible. Some fantastic character stuff, some really complex story happening, which if it's going to pay off, who knows. It's not a finished show yet, but the first 2 seasons were very, very good. We are both in a fan group for that TV show, where people can discuss theories and post memes and things. It's a fan group. 95% of the posts are, what was this basic plot point? What happened in this episode? What was going on here? Why did this character do this when they didn't do that? You just weren't paying attention because it was like a dream sequence or a dance sequence or something like that. And it's led to a recurring joke with Scott and I, where if we see a post where that is asking an obvious question, we just send a gif of somebody staring at their phone, because that is how that person watched the episode. They didn't they put it on and then they glued their eyes onto Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or something, and so it's a genuine problem of people not paying attention to the shows they're watching. But at the same time, don't fucking write shows for those people. They don't care. They're not going to understand either way.
Yeah, it's exhausting. And I believe The Boys is kind of written in that way, but it's less obvious. I feel like The Boys... It doesn't do flashbacks.
It doesn't really do many flashbacks, yeah.
No, but in terms of like dialogue and in terms of like action sequences, I feel like it's mostly for people to occasionally look up at the screen for, It's simple to follow in that way, which is why I think most people are just catching on to the fact that the show is making fun of them the entire fucking time because they were on the phone the entire time.
Yeah. Oh my god. What an incredible win for media literacy that this past decade has been. It's tragic. It's honestly tragic. I have got a collection of messages from my friend Sean that I would like to read because I thought they were very funny about his perspective on the final episode.
And Sean's Sean's a very casual viewer of the show, and I don't think he does deep depth in analysis like we try to do. He's a guy who watches it and just reacts to it, I think.
Yeah, is that fair to say? He enjoys Doctor Who. He's watched it since he was a kid, so he knows. He knows it. He's seen every episode. I watched the entire Jodie era with him, so he knows everything about Modern Who going into it. He knows the lore of the Doctor Who. He's seen some classic Who. Like he is a big fan of Doctor Who. He's just not as obsessive as you or I are. But anyway, this is what he had to say. Sorry, I can't actually read. Apparently, Doctor Finale was more wild than I could imagine. Doctor screaming, "I bring death," and murdering the fuck out of Sutek was very funny. Ruby's mum being kind of normal was a bit of a meh reveal. Also, the entire end where Mrs. Flood looks like an absolute meme and says the Doctor story ends in terror killed me. Also, when the Doctor had his speech with Ruby about how she has changed him, all I could think about was in Space Babies him screaming genocide to Ruby. Sutek seemed very badass, and in part 1 of the final, it got me so hyped about him, but in part 2, they did fuck all with him. It made me so disappointed with the twist of Ruby's mom because it made it into such a big deal, when actually it was, oh wait, she's so normal. Normal people can hide their identities from gods. Like, what? I think even a god of death could see through that bullshit. No wonder he died so easily. Unit can't stop Sutek, but Ruby can put a leash on him. It makes no sense. Silly episode. It made season 1 so shit. I'm very disappointed with Russell, as it seems he was promising a lot of twists and mysteries to New Who. Instead, he trolled everyone. And then we continued to talk for a few days, and he gave me another big paragraph, and he said, the Doctor, this is about his performance with, or his opinion on the Doctor, I think. The Doctor is wild. He's very emotional and makes out he's chilled, but he cries and screams a lot. I also agree with you that I feel like I know nothing about Ruby as a character, which annoys me. I feel like the Doctor making out that she's super important and special is dumb because they have a friendship from the get-go, and it's felt forced that they've always been best mates from the moment that they met, and there's not been any genuine growth from each other. I feel like the Doctor hasn't learned anything from Ruby, apart from, I guess, he can take a hug when he is sad now. Hey, Russell did the mystery thing for fan engagement reasons. It's so silly. He had potential to make the story good. Instead, it feels lazy. Straight up, so shit. And he said this was his opinion on Mrs. Flood, and this is the last big message we had about Doctor Who before we start talking about different things. No answers to who Mrs. Flood is yet. Seems they're keeping her a big secret. Can't wait to find out that she's also extremely normal and somehow just knows so much about the Doctor for no reason and then leaves. And yeah, I think he agrees with the same sort of points that we've been making in this episode so far, which is there's absolutely nothing to talk about. There is nothing going on with any character. There's no arcs. There's no plot. There's just a series of events.
Oh god, just remember the end of series 1, the parting of the ways, all the scenes where, you know, the Doctor is facing off against the Daleks on Satellite 5, or whatever the fuck it's called, and you juxtapose that with Rose on Earth, living an ordinary life, because she was abandoned by the Doctor. That fucking scene in the TARDIS where Rose is like, hey, remember that blonde lady who stood by Dad's side when he died? That was me.
Yeah. Oh,
and then Jackie runs out to the TARDIS because she can't take the emotionality of his moment. That's fucking incredible. That's a series final. That's all the major plot points being wrapped up. You know, that's every moment felt satisfying in that final. We covered it last year, and it still hits on so many fucking levels.
It's so good.
Like, holy shit, it's incredible.
Genuinely a really good season of TV. It holds up so goddamn well. And I don't think that I honestly, having to rewatch these episodes this past week felt like a chore. I did not want to rewatch this season. And, you know, it could just be because we've just spent the past 8 weeks, like, going through it, or 7 weeks, sorry, because the first 2 episodes dropped at once. But I I didn't enjoy my time going through it a second time as much as I kind of enjoyed it for the excitement of New Who the first time. A lot more of the flaws came out, and you and I went and ranked every episode from this season, and I think you said that my average was like 6 point something. Basically, I just say 6 points. It's like a
Yeah, you were 6.25. I was 6.49. So there's not a major difference between our two scores.
Yeah. I'm like a 6 out of 10. You're like a 6.5 out of 10. Which is way lower than I would have expected. I would have thought maybe a 7 or an 8, 9 maybe if I was feeling really generous. But a 6 out of 10. I think I'd give Flux a 6 out of 10, maybe a 5 or 4, maybe a 5 or a 4. But there's a 6 out of 10 is sad. It's very sad that it's got there. But do you want to go through our rankings
let's go for our rankings, worst to best, and feel free in the comments below, leave your rankings of a season. I'm very interested to see where other people fall on the spectrum. I think you definitely hated this season more than me, because you have a lot more scores below 5 than I do. I think I only have 2 episodes below 5. Which is Space Babies and Empire of Death. But yeah, you can start.
Yeah. So I've got my least favorite episode out of the entire new era of Russell T Davies is the Empire of Death, which I gave a 1.5 out of 10. Because I think it is genuinely abysmal. The 1.5 stars is purely for acting. Every other aspect of this episode falls apart for me. I absolutely hate the plot. I hate the core. I hate the payoff for it. It makes me like the other episodes less, and I think everything that this episode tries to do, it does it poorly, or it doesn't try at all. And for me, I want more out of my finals. It's put down. I put it below Space Babies, which, spoilers, is my next one, because Space Babies at least has a conclusion that makes sense. It at least tells a story that goes from A to B to C. This undoes everything set up in the previous episodes and actively harms them and lowers my opinions of them at the same time. So it is the worst episode for me because it made me like the show less.
Yeah. You want to go on?
What about you? What's your least favorite? We'll do this one at a time.
My least favorite is also Empire of Death. So,
what did you give it out of 10? I want to hear your perspective.
I gave it a 3 out of 10. I think it is slightly more generous, and I can't think of any qualities I really like about the episode other than the direction and acting. So, I when I'm watching it, I feel like it's a well-polished product, if I'm not thinking too deeply about the plot, if that makes sense.
If you're staring at your phone. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the worst episode of Doctor Who ever. It's just extremely unsatisfying. There's some, again, great performances. Fucking Gabriel Wolf as Sutek is incredible. The guy's like 91 and he still has the vocal cords for Sutek. It's incredible. He gives me chills. He's great.
Yeah. Wish he could do absolutely anything with that villain. Yeah.
It's a shame he's only played it. It's sad to bring a 91-year-old man back. This is probably his last performance, and I can't think of any other positive qualities about this episode. Sadly, just unsatisfying as hell.
Yeah.
Your number 11.
My number 11 is Space Babies, which I gave a staggering 2 out of 10. Again, the performances are very solid in this episode, and it also tells a coherent story. That is about the only positives that I can really find in the Space Babies. I think the wackiness is slightly too wacky for me. I think it is an insane episode to be your first episode to try and get in new fans. I think the episode feels like it's moving at fast forward with, let's dump all this exposition at once. Let's do these scenes that we've already done before, but make them worse. it is not a good episode, and, you know, it ends with the giant spaceship farting away, which is great because it's a really big fart of an episode.
Oh, the ending of that episode fucking foreshadows the ending of this episode. A giant fart in the wind.
Yeah.
Yeah. My number 11 is also Space Babies. I gave it a 4 out of 10. I don't hate it. I think I hated it the first time, and then I warmed up to it, and now I'm unwarmed to it. I think it's just a bit too cute. It feels a bit too written for boomers, if you know what I mean. The same kind of boomers who sit around sharing Minion memes on Facebook. Like, yeah, these characters are cute. You know, it's cute babies doing adult things. That's cute. But it never shakes off a feeling of it being like it feels like a Baby Genius movie, you know? Which is, every time you have to do a CGI baby, terrifying. Fucking terrifying. There used to be an advert like 5-6 years ago, I think it's the AA advert, where there's a baby singing in the back seat of a car, and the baby is CGI, and every time it came on, it's just uncanny valley. It's terrifying. Babies should never be in front of the cameras, especially CGI babies. Please no. Your next one?
My number 10, is this number 10? Must be.
Yeah.
Is Star Beast, which I gave a 4 out of 10.
Shocking.
I do not like this episode. I like the performances. David Tennant is fun as the Doctor back again. It's nice to see Donna back again. The exposition in this episode is terrible. The dialogue in this episode, I think, is genuinely some of the worst dialogue I've seen in Doctor Who for a while. It is delivered poorly and written poorly. The ending with the whole Dr. Donna thing being just a hand wipe away, don't worry about it. Absolutely hate that. Completely undermines the ending of series 4. Dislike. The twist with Beep the Meep is fine. Obviously, I can't really know what it was like from a blind perspective, because going into it, I knew what the twist was going to be already, because we did research on the character and stuff like that. Curse the podcast. But I think they're fine. I think the effects are good. I think it's a fun, however long it is. It goes by pretty quick. It's paced okay. But there's just not a lot of positives I can pull from the episode, and it leaves a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth.
That's fair. My number 10 is The Church on Ruby Road. And it is number 10 because of the Empire of Death, you know? It's hard to watch that episode without thinking of how the plot points resolve itself. You know, it's a perfectly fine... I gave it a 6 out of 10. It's a perfectly fine Christmas special. Probably... I can't think of the last Christmas special I've really enjoyed. Probably The Husbands of River Song. And it's not quite on the same level because that episode
that's the best
delivered emotionally, you know. It's the best one, so it's not a contest really, but I'm honestly fine with the episode as it is. You know, the goblins are fine. The introduction to Ruby and the brand new Doctor are completely fine. There's no complaints really. It just does not hold up once you know how all the plot points reveal itself. You know, this episode, The Empire of Death, brings back the anti-gravity glove, and I'm like, I honestly don't give a shit. Why?
Yeah, no, that's fair. My number 9, we're on 9, right? I think is The Legend of Ruby Sunday, which I gave 4.5 out of 10. I think the performances are good. I think it's a really good setup that has no payoff whatsoever, and that is really what drags it down in those rankings for me, because it's a pretty solid episode, but as you said, this kind of gets ruined by the Empire of Death, as the Church on Ruby Road does for you. Legend of Ruby Sunday does for me, because I go in watching it going, aha, this isn't gonna be nice. This is not this. I'm not gonna leave this happy. And watching it a first time, I ranked it probably a lot higher. We were very positive on that episode when it came out.
Yeah.
Watching it for the second time, having seen the Empire of Death, it really drags the episode down for me. It is a lot of setup for bullshit, and that kind of ruins the experience.
My number 9 is The Star Beast. A really solid family adventure film, I guess you want to call it. It feels like E.T.,
yeah.
it feels like an Amblin film, and I think in hindsight, I'm just not satisfied with the return of David Tennant because, when it got announced that he was going to be the 14th Doctor, I thought the 3 episodes were going to be, hey, nostalgia is kind of limiting this show. Let's kind of go forward, And then it turns out Russell just brought back David Tennant because he felt like bringing back David Tennant. There's no point to David Tennant coming back. There's no point to Donna coming back, really. But at the same time,
gets people talking, baby.
But at the same time, the Star Beast is perfectly fine. I enjoy it. I don't hate it as much as you. I don't have any strong feelings towards it.
I don't think many people hate the Star Beast as much as me. I just didn't vibe with the episode, honestly.
Yeah.
My number 8 is 73 yards, which I gave 4.5 out of 10. I disliked this episode when I first watched it, and every time I watch it, I dislike it more. I have seen this episode 4 times. 3 or 4 times. I've seen it a lot, and nothing makes sense in it. The explanation for it is not satisfying. It has good moments for sure. It definitely has got good scenes in it. I really like the scene with Ruby and her mum. I really like the starting unit scene. It falls apart when the time skips start happening, and it completely collapses by the end of the episode, where there's just no explanation given to anything that you've got. There's logic holes if you go back to try and figure out any sort of reasoning for it. I can understand the character aspect of, we're looking at this through Ruby, he's got abandonment issues, blah, 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 but I think it's communicated very poorly. Go back and listen to our episode covering 73 yards if you want to hear more about that, because I could talk about that in more depth in that episode than I could right now. But I don't like 73 yards. Thought it was a bad episode. Doesn't really hold up very well either. Also, there's a thing in the Empire of Death where they try to bring back the fucking 73 yard thing with the they mentioned briefly the 73 yards like a magic number or something like that. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they just kind of hand wave it away. But yeah, garbage episode. 4.5 out of 10.
My number, what is this? 8. Is it 8?
8. Yeah, it's 8.
Yes, my number 8 is The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Again, yeah, it's definitely the setup that lets this episode down, because it's set up to nothing. Even when we first reviewed it, I'm like, it's just setup. There's no plot going on in the episode, but I kind of like, but it's kind of like a hangout episode, if you know what I mean. Like, Doctor Who just has... Who, classic Doctor Who used to have these hangout episodes where it's just the companions in the TARDIS kind of bantering, like episode 1 of The Chase, where they're just watching TV, essentially, just watching the technology in the TARDIS. Interdimensional cable. Exploring that. Yeah, which is a fun concept, but with the scene where Ian danced to the Beatles is great. I love these kind of like hangout episodes where it's just characters having banter, and it's fun banter, the whole Elon Musk thing, the whole Davina McCall thing is fun. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's nothing else to the episode I really like, to be honest. But, but my 3 6 out of 10s, The Legends of Ruby Sunday, The Star Beast, and The Church on the Ruby Road, are kind of roughly on the same quality. So I think over the years, they're probably going to be interchangeable, really. So so this is kind of like a rough list, I'll probably hate it more next time. But Legend of Ruby Sunday, not a bad episode. It's fine.
No, it's fine. My number 7 is The Church on Ruby Road, which I gave a 6 out of 10. See, I gave it the same score you did, but I ranked a lot more lower than the the Church on Ruby Road. I think I agree with a lot of your points. It's completely fine. The Goblin stuff is fine. I still hate the song. I absolutely... The song is bizarre. It's such a shit song. And then there's a point in the song where it stops. And then they're like... and we just keep going after that. Like, there's like a whole beat where all the music stops and then the lyrics just continue. It's such a long fucking musical sequence. And it's garbage. The Doctor just straight up murders the Goblin and never gives a shit about it, even though apparently he doesn't like killing things when Sutek comes around. But I think the performances are good again. I think the effects are cool again. I think it's a fine Christmas special. Christmas specials tend to be a bit shit anyway. So this is by far one of the better Christmas specials. But it's again undermined by the Empire of Death and some weird plot points throughout, but it's fine.
I think certain episodes of Doctor Who hit better when you have a food
drunk at
hangover,
Christmas.
when you've eaten, when you're in a food coma and you're just sitting there watching television and you're like, oh, I can't move because you've just eaten too much turkey, or in your case, whatever a vegetarian turkey is.
Brussels sprouts. Too many Brussels sprouts.
So instead of feeling full up, you're just farting. Okay.
Story of my life.
My number 7 is 73 yards. 6.5 out of 10 is what I gave it. It's an episode I'm very frustrated with, but not in the same way as Empire of Death. With 73 yards, I appreciate Russell T Davies trying to challenge himself. You know, this is an episode of Doctor Who that we've never quite seen before, and it feels experimental, which is what I want from this show. I want Doctor Who to feel like an experiment sometimes. In this case, it's an experiment that doesn't quite work out, because after the 28-minute mark, once you get into the politics, it falls apart and the ending is just unsatisfying. Common theme of Russell T Davies too, I guess. I don't hate it. You know, I don't hate the episode. I'm kind of positive about it. I appreciate the A24 kind of feel to it, where it's experimental, and I feel like every time I'm going to watch it, I'm going to feel more frustrated, especially since this final happened. It's... I feel bad about this show
now. My number 6 is The Devil's Chord, which I gave 7 out of 10. Jinx Monsoon is incredible in their role as Maestro. I think they're a really interesting villain that has absolutely nothing to do and is pretty wasted. I think this episode being marketed around the Beatles was a weird choice because they are glorified extras in the episode. I enjoy the middle part most, where you've got things like the Doctor encapsulating everything in silence. You've got the big like set changes with Maestro and things like that. I think the final fight is dog shit. The musical battle, I think, is terrible. I think the way they defeat Maestro feels so underwhelming. And also there's some internal logic gaps, as we talked about in our review, with like, if music's gone, why does everybody have instruments? Why are people still making music? Blah blah blah. Like, there's some weird logistic things where like the world that's set up doesn't quite fit with what the story you're trying to tell. But it's a fun episode. It's entertaining. The performances, again, are fantastic. Shooty's really likable as the Doctor in this. Millie's really likable as Ruby in this. And again, Jinx Monsoon absolutely shines. So it's a fun 7 out of 10.
My number 6 is The Giggle, which is an episode I had a lot of fun with. Gave it a 7 out of 10, which to me is like my average kind of score in terms of, like, if you go to my Letterboxd page, most of my movies are 7 out of 10. Like, that's my go-to score. So we're into the really good territory now. My problem with The Giggle is the fact it feels like it doesn't have a final act. You know, you have the first act where it's the Doctor kind of discovering the toy maker for the first time, and then the second act is fucking it doesn't feel like it has a second act. It feels like it's incomplete in a way. I can't quite work out why. It feels like, I think the problem is playing catch is such a weak resolution.
Yeah.
To the point where it feels like it feels like it shouldn't end there, you know? It feels like there should be more of a creative sequence in terms of, like, you have a fucking toy maker. He can bend reality to any will, and he's just like, hey, I want to play a game of catch. You know, it feels like it's a letdown in terms of what the toy maker can do. And also the fucking whole thing about the master in his teeth is such a weak... Like, is that plot point going to come back? The master is his tooth?
I think...
and we see somebody picking up the master at the end.
Yeah, I don't know if somebody picking up the master at the end is ever going to play back to. I think the master might just show up again, unexplained, as the master is one to do. But I think that the master being in the Toymaker's tooth was just a way of Russell to let that character go on ice for a while, because the master has been the main villain of this show since season 8. Villain was the master. It was the villain. Yeah, the master was the villain throughout, because it was Missy with Capaldi, and then it was Missy again in season 10, with the master coming back as well with there. And then in season 11, there's not a villain at all because it's Teeth Guy. But then the master comes back in series 12, and then
what if Flux? You know, Tim Shaw, his whole thing is he collects the teeth of his victims. What if one of those teeth
Oh my god, what if he got the master's tooth? Yeah, oh my god. Oh my god, Tim Shaw's back. Yeah, but I think it's just a way of Russell to put the master on ice. I don't think there's really any big plot points happening.
I hope so.
Yeah. My number...
One,
5. Yes, my number 5 is Dot and Bubble, which I gave a 7.5 out of 10. It is a completely fine episode. I don't have a lot to say on Dot and Bubble. I don't have a lot of problems with it. It just doesn't really hit super hard. It's a fun adventure. It's got a fun twist at the end, an amazing performance from Shooty at the end, and a nice actual character moment that we get with his doctor, one of the few, where he has to confront something about himself and how others perceive him and how that affects his ability to save people. I think that that's an incredible perspective to take on the Doctor. I wish they would do something with it, but they don't really. And other than that, totally fine episode. It's a lot of fun. It's a silly fun episode, you know.
My number 5 is The Devil's Chord, which is a really, really fun episode for me. I think Maestro might be the best new villain since The Silence, in terms of, as the first episode. The Silence falls apart.
We were just talking about Tim Shaw, so I don't know what you're trying to get at here.
But yeah, I think Jinx Monsoon brings a lot of energy to this role, and it is impossible not to like her performance as she's playing Maestro. It is fucking incredible, and I really hope she's a recurring villain. I know it's impossible to kind of get her back in because she's on Broadway, like she's doing 2 shows a year. I think she just came off of Chicago, and now she's doing Little Shop of Horrors. She is insanely busy. Nice. But I'd fucking love to see her and the Toy Maker kind of meet and have a duet, you know. Neil Patrick Harris and Jinx Monsoon would be incredible chemistry together. It would be so fucking good.
Yeah.
God, and also, you know, bring back Jonathan Groff, like free.
Oh yeah.
In terms of like three Tony nominated actors, bring them all back in one episode. Would be incredible.
Chicago is a really good musical as well. If you've not seen it, the movie's great. I need to see it. Very good movie. My number 4 is Rogue, speaking of Musical Man, which I gave an 8 out of 10. I think this is a really good episode. I think this is, again, like Dot and Bubble, not a lot going on in it, but it's a fun adventure. Rogue is an interesting character to me, and I really like the chemistry that they have with the Doctor. I think that Ruby has absolutely nothing going on in this episode. I think the villains are kind of weak. The ending, which is a recurring theme in this season, kind of falls apart, where there's some logic holes, there's some weird gaps, like how was Ruby actually stuck on that thing if you just needed to pull her off, etc, etc, etc. But besides those facts, I still had fun with the episode. I still enjoyed it. It was still well performed. It was still an entertaining watch. And it's a silly, fun episode of Doctor Who with some bird people and a sexy man, and it's very gay. And it was a good time. I enjoyed it.
And it pissed off the right people. My number 4 is also Rogue, which I gave a 7 out of 210 because I made a typo. So I really hated this episode,
Yeah.
Rogue 7 out of 10. Pretty much what you said. I think Jonathan Groff is great in the role. I kind of like his smoldering kind of personality. It works out well. Not 100% sold on their chemistry or relationship. I kind of want a bit more out of it, but hopefully he comes back
we've
next
ever
season,
seen the Doctor.
Because my problem is, if Jonathan Groff isn't in the next season, I think I'll kind of forget about him. You know what I mean? If he comes back,
don't worry, there'll be a flashback.
3,
There'll be a flashback.
If he comes back in season 3, I'll be less interested in this character because it's been too long. I think the problem is we got too big of an actor for what is probably going to be a recurring role. This is the new River Song, where Alex Kingston wasn't working as much as Jonathan Groff is. So you can have Alex Kingston for half a season. I don't think you can have the same with Jonathan Groff, I'm afraid. And I'm kind of worried about how they're going to evolve the character. I have no idea where they're going to go with the character, because I'm not going to say he has no personality, but I just don't buy into him as much as other people do. But I really like him in terms of performance alone. I'm just not into the writing of his character. I need a bit more. But yeah, the fucking bird people just wanting to role play, not cosplay, Bridgerton is fucking fantastic, and I think it's a really fun little villain thing. And also, it's the only episode this season to be written by new people, so more episodes written by new people, please.
Yes, please give us new perspectives. My number 3 is Wild Blue Yonder, which I gave an 8 out of 10. As I said earlier in this episode, I think that this has got a bit of a really slow start, and it kind of meanders about for ages, where they don't really feel like they're doing anything until you get to that really good twist, but it's like halfway through the episode or something like that, of the nothing that's come in and is taking the form, and there's some really fun, goofy effects. I think it's a very silly episode. I do think it's kind of also the problem with it's like the catalyst for the problem of season 1, which is this is the one that allows Russell T Davies to hand wave away shit with magic, because things are the salt or whatever the fuck. Even though also there's some plot holes with it in relations to Flux, because the Doctor has literally been into the outside of the universe before, because he was traveling there in Flux. That's where his mum was hiding, was outside the universe and between this one and the next. But we just won't worry about that, and we'll just enjoy the silly episode with the goofy effects. It's a fun time. It goes by pretty quick. It is my second favorite of the 60th anniversary. Therefore, also my second least favorite.
My number 3 is Dot and Bubble, which I gave 8 out of 10. It's a really solid fucking episode, even before the twist. I really like this world. It feels different enough, but also similar enough to Earth, if that makes sense. It feels like it could happen on our planet, and I'm glad it doesn't happen on our planet, because you run into an Orphan 55 situation of the ending where the Doctor turns to the camera and says, hey, this is an alternative future for Earth, and it's what could happen, and it's like, oh,
God, that's so shit. That's so bad. Yeah, this is terrible.
You could do a cautionary tale on a planet that looks like Earth. It works.
An Earth-like planet. Yeah.
And then the ending twist really worked for me, because I was starting to pick up on, hey, she kind of said something that kind of rubbed the wrong way, where she's like, I think she says to the doctor, hey, I thought you just looked the same as this other person.
Yeah.
Referring to the... Yeah. And it's like, you know, that's an episode that is more subtle in terms of, like, its reveals, where, you know, 10% of the audience can catch the first microtransaction, and so forth. You know, it's subtle reveals which really works, and then the ending just hits you hard. You know, that's a great end, and that's one of the greats in terms of Doctor Who endings. And I'm completely satisfied with this episode. I was expecting it to be a Black Mirror ripoff, and I got a bit more. You know, it really works for me. What's your number 2?
There's big Black Mirror vibes for it, for sure. My number 2 is The Giggle, which I gave an 8.5 out of 10. I really like this episode. I really like the first 2/3 of this episode, I think, where this episode I did rank higher, and every time I've watched it, it's dropped about half a star on Letterboxd for me. It started at 4.5, I think, or 5, and then it went to 4.5, and now it's currently 4. And that's all purely the ending. I think Neil Patrick Harris is amazing. I'm so glad he was in Doctor Who. I absolutely love him as an actor, and I thought he brought so much to the role of the Toymaker. I thought that his performance of the Toymaker was incredible, with the subtle bits of racism hanging throughout, and his changing accent and his weird teeth that constantly change, and the way that he warps reality was super experimental and weird, and I super loved that stuff. I liked how it's just set go from the start of the episode, and we are straight in, everything's chaos, and it's just fun, and it absolutely flies by. There's an amazing dance sequence with Neil Patrick Harris for no reason, where he just murders some guys and leaves again. Incredible stuff. Want more things like that. But I have the same problems with you with the bi-regeneration absolutely being meaningless, the game of catch being really unsatisfying as far as a way to defeat the god of games, or whatever it is that the Toymaker is. And on retrospect, with the way that the season 1 is, it feels a bit disconnected, and it doesn't feel like this is Ncuti's Doctor and things like that. The TARDIS splitting in half with the mallet, the ramp that the Doctor has to get a wheelchair user in the TARDIS, and then never lets any wheelchair user in the TARDIS.
I mean, I'm slightly confused about this, because, you know, when we first saw Bernard Cribbins as Wilf returning for his 60th anniversary, we first saw it in photographs of the Doctor wheeling Bernard Cribbins into the TARDIS. And I'm confused, because I'm guessing they were meant to shoot a scene where Bernard Cribbins is inside the TARDIS, but I guess the TARDIS set wasn't built at that point. So they sadly never got to shoot the interior, which is a huge shame. So the TARDIS was meant for Bernard Cribbins and not for Shirley, I guess. I guess even when we were shooting the scene of the 2 TARDISes, we still didn't have the TARDIS set ready, which is, again, a shame. The first time you mentioned the idea of a person in a wheelchair being able to use the TARDIS, and you don't invite her in. That's insane.
Yeah.
It's sad.
But it's a fun episode, and it is my number 2. What is your number 2?
My number 2 is The Wild Blue Yonder, which I really enjoy all the setup. I enjoy the little relationships moments between Catherine Tate and David Tennant. We're just watching 2 great actors interact with each other. Like, again, going back to The Runaway Bride, who could ever have predicted that Catherine Tate would have been this good in the role of Donna Noble? Like, she is incredible. She is probably my favorite companion in the new run, honestly. She is great. And it was really satisfying to see her come back and just interact with David Tennant. And then the episode goes fucking bananas.
Yeah.
Like the scene where David Tennant's head is between his legs and he's chasing Donna out of the room is what I want from Doctor Who. I want insane stuff to happen. I haven't felt that insanity since Jodie Whittaker talk to a frog on a chair,
The
which
frog,
I really
yeah,
love.
that's pretty insane.
I need more insanity from a show where anything goes. Giant David Tennant and Catherine Tate chasing small David Tennant and Catherine Tate. Yes, please. Just make it as insane as possible, please. Your number one.
My number one is, of course, Boom, which I think is probably one of the best episodes of Doctor Who I have seen in such a goddamn long time. Yeah. It has got everything that we have complained the other episodes don't have, which is depth. It has got character moments, it has got resolutions, it has got conflict, it has got lines of dialogue that you can dissect and find meaning in. It has got conflict between the Doctor and Ruby, where the Doctor tells Ruby off. Ruby doesn't listen to the Doctor because she thinks she knows better, and maybe she does know better, but then she gets killed. And then, there's so much going on. There's the wider metaphor around war and religion and faith, and it's such a freaking good episode of Doctor Who. Absolutely, I loved it. I adore Stephen Moffat as a writer. I know he has his flaws. I know he has mistakes. I know he can sometimes be a bit convoluted, but he is one of my favorite writers of all time. And this was an incredible comeback episode for him. I'm glad he isn't the showrunner, because I don't want to see a Moffat showrunning Doctor Who again. As much as I loved his first run, I think what we're learning from Russell T Davis's second run is maybe don't do it. Maybe don't come back for a second run. Stay as a guest writer.
Yeah, my number one is also Boom, 9 out of 10. And again, what works about Stephen Moffat is when he's doing something extremely simple. Blink works because it's a simple concept, really, at the end of the day. It's simple, but it's complicated in its simpleness, if that makes sense. Like what works about his
you've got a simple idea that deals with a massive issue. Yeah. So like this episode has got the Doctor standing on a landmine and he can't move. And the way that he gets out of that is he solves war. That's how he gets off the landmine, is he has to end a war on an entire planet. That's the scale of that is insane, and he has to do that with just his words. He has to just talk, and he has to just convince one person of doing the right thing. And it's incredible, and also there's a flashlight in it. It's perfect.
It's I'm glad to see Stephen Moffat back. I think he needs to focus on the more simple scripts, like, the Doctor dances and the Empty Child. Simple concept. Great emotional work, The Girl in the Fireplace. Complicated story, but it's simple. It's very simple. Just a love story between... It's a prototype of the Doctor and River Song, And then, of course, the Series 4 episode. Like, Moffat really works when he does simple stuff. When he writes a villain where if you look at him and you look away, you forget about them. That's simple stuff, and it works so well, and it's scary. But when you write it so they're part of a cult...
They're also a mega church.
It's too complicated. It's way too complicated. And I think again, Moffat works when he's doing one episode and he's not overseeing the overarching story. I think Russell also works when he's not doing episodes that isn't part of the overarching story, because again, our top 5 is stuff that isn't about the overarching story, really. I can't say anything else about Boom. It's excellent. It's really solid.
It is good. It is my favorite episode out of this entire run, and it should be the only episode you watch because the rest of it's not worth it. But I think that is pretty much sums up this new era of Doctor Who. Bit of a wet fart, but at least there was no skid marks this time, so it's an improvement. We're getting there.
It's better than flat for sure.
Yeah, it's baby steps, baby steps. I'm sad.
Cautiously optimistic for the future, I think.
Sure. I'm looking forward to the Christmas special. That's Moffat's next episode, so that should be fun. But until then, I don't know if there's much else any closing thoughts you want to say, or have you pretty much said everything you're gonna do?
No, I've pretty much said everything. Our next episode will be out on the 12th of July. We are doing Day of the Moon, or The Impossible Astronaut, whatever the fuck comes first. I think it's The Impossible Astronaut. Which I'm excited for, because, we just covered an entire season where the overarching storyline isn't really present in each episode. And Series 6 is the exact opposite, where we start with the overarching storyline, the death of the Doctor, which is, it's going to be interesting to go back to that after 12 years. I'm really excited to cover it. It's a fun episode. Bless you.
Thank you. I liked The Impossible Astronaut. I loved that entire arc so much. When I first watched it, when I was like, what year did that come out? 2011 or 12 or something?
Yes,
like I was
11.
Yeah, I was 11 years old, so it just blew my mind. Absolutely loved it. So I'm excited to revisit that story. Come then, and then after that we will have a news, which we may be trying to do something different. We may be live streaming the news when we record it, so make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/@whowatcheswhopod, where you can see us in video form every goddamn Friday, and especially at the end of the month, where we will be live and you can chat to us live as we go over all the news and rumors and things going on in the Doctor Who sphere. You can also follow us on Facebook at Who Watches Who, on Twitter at Watches Doctor, and you can listen to us in audio form anywhere you get podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. There's an RSS feed in the link if you want to listen to your podcast that way. You could buy my book. I wrote a book, I don't have it nearby, called Can You Taste the Color Orange? It is a silly sci-fi story. If you've just listened to me critique sci-fi for 2 hours, why not read my book and critique sci-fi that I created, which probably... Honestly, I think it's probably a little bit better than the season of Doctor Who. It has a conclusion. This one doesn't. But you can read my book. Other than that, we will be back next week, same bat time, same bat hour, with The Impossible Astronaut. And until then, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh.